I had gone to one particular camp since I was about 10 years old. I had switched from another camp because this one had a better tripping program. After going a couple of times as a camper, and then doing all of the leadership programs, I was hired for my first summer as a full-time junior counselor. Pre-camp was uneventful. They ran through the standard WHI-MIS training. We did safety situations, both on land and in water, and they made sure that we knew what to expect. A couple of days before campers arrived, we got paired with our partners for our first session. They give you a secret location, and you're supposed to meet and bond with your co-counselor. So, I went and find that I'm paired with another first year, and one that wasn't particularly adept at his job. For the story, we'll call him Adam. I was not excited about working with him for 2 weeks, but I wasn't going to complain. The next few days were dedicated to planning your week with the campers before they arrive. We got our activities planned, mostly all by myself, and the last thing to do was make our trip plan. We had the oldest age group, and that meant the longest trip. You could plan a 2-week session, 5 days, 4 nights. This was my thing, and even though I had done most of the work up until this point, I was committed to take control of planning and organizing this trip. We get out the maps, ruler and string, and after about 20 minutes, I have planned it all. 84 kilometers through the Penetanguishene area. It was an ambitious route for 15-year-olds, and I hadn't ever tripped in that area before. But I was confident that it would be fine. The last step is to submit your plan to the tripping director and run it over with them, so that they can make sure there isn't any oversights. That afternoon I took my maps, meal plan, and route card, and I headed back to the trip building at my scheduled time. The tripping director was waiting on one side of the large aluminium table. He smiled and stood when I walked in. I put my stuff down and began going over the days one by one. I get up to the second morning when he stopped me. So, day 2 is our longest. We have a 21-kilometer You cannot stay there, he interrupted. The trip is fine. You can't stay there on day 2. I was shocked, to say the least. We would be staying on an island in the middle of a relatively small lake. There were no other campsites within several kilometers. It was our longest day, and in order to change, it would be at least another 4 kilometers. Nearly 1K of that would have been portaging, and he would have known all this. Why? I responded, probably more aggressively than I should have. We've just had trouble there, in that area. You can't stay on that island. Go to the next spot. I was furious. This was going to make our trip significantly harder. I couldn't really say no though, so I rerouted us and got it cleared. That was that. I told Adam, but he didn't really understand how difficult it would be, so it all kind of went over his head. Campers arrived the next day, and I let myself forget about the whole thing. We met all the kids, and the first days were great. By day 5, I was excited again for the trip. Even though it was going to be really hard, I loved tripping enough to not care. That day, we packed our food, equipment, and personals for the trip, and we got ready to leave the next day. The next morning, everything went relatively smoothly. We got everything loaded on time, and the driver was ready to go. There was a 4-hour drive to put in, so I found myself chatting with the driver, who I of course knew from camp. For the sake of argument, we'll call him John. I was explaining the situation of needing to change the route when he reacted strangely. "Wait, where were you originally staying?" he said, panicked. "I don't know, some island, dead center in the middle of a lake. I can pull out the map if you want." "Yeah, do that." He pulled over and began ripping through the glove box. I got out and headed for the trailer to grab the route card and maps. When I got back, he was waiting with a small green notebook opened up to the last page. It had 2 numbers, each 6 digits long, scrawled across the top. Coordinates. I pulled out the map for night 2, and my heart dropped when I saw that the numbers on his page matched exactly with the island that we would have stayed on. I was freaked out, but not as much as when I looked back up at the driver. All the color had drained from his face, and he was shaking. "You can't stay on that island," he managed. "We're not. Nick, the trip director, made us change it," I replied. He nodded and put his hands back on the wheel. I could not understand why he, or Nick, cared so much, but I just let it go and kept on driving. John didn't speak again for the rest of the drive, which was still 3 hours. We got to the beach and we began unloading. John didn't move, which was weird. He stayed in the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel while we took off the canoes, loaded them up, and slipped them into the water. As we pushed off, I looked back to see if we had forgotten anything. John was staring at me, still bone white, still slightly shaking. As we started to paddle away, he just shook his head. "Don't do it," I saw him mouth. Then he stomped on the gas. I was, of course, thoroughly freaked out after that, but I put it behind me and focused on the day ahead. That day was non-eventful. We made it to site early and were able to set up camp quickly. As far as campers go, this group was one of the best. We played some games, had a good dinner over the fire, and we headed off to bed. We woke up the next morning to pouring rain. I stumbled out of the counselor tent, a bit deflated, and began to make breakfast on the little stove. It would have been impossible to make a fire with the wet wood, but using the Coleman would take longer. On our longest day, this was an issue. I got the kids out of their tents and had them pack up as quickly as possible. I managed to get the breakfast made relatively fast, and we were able to push off on time, which was a miracle. We were actually making good time when the first disaster happened. Thunder. Shit. Camp policy is you need to get to the side of the lake ASAP and wait half an hour. This happened on and off for 5 hours. By 1 p.m., the sun had broken through, but we were several hours behind. Another camp policy is you can't be on the water after sunset, so we were in trouble. Sunset is about 8:30 where we were, and by 8, we found ourselves on a small lake with a large island dead center. Our original spot. It would have been at least another hour to get to the next site, so I made an executive decision. Nick probably just had some issues with the spot due to some legalities or local pressure, I thought. Cottages lined the surrounding area, and some residents don't like campers in the area. I decided to risk it. As we pulled in, people who lived in the cottages began to come to their front steps and stare. They seemed to mutter to each other. Many of them were pointing, shaking their heads. That's it then, I thought to myself. They don't like campers on the island. That's the issue. No big deal. I was wrong. It happened that night. Sounds in the dark are obviously commonplace during trips, but not like this. I tried to ignore them. First, just one set of feet, claws, hooves. But then, more came, circling the tent, pacing slowly. The worst part was, you could hear them come, but you would never hear them go. It was as if they approached, paced, and then just stayed there, waiting outside the tent. I kept my eyes closed. Stop it. You're overreacting, I thought. At some point, around 4 a.m., I really had to piss. The sounds had not come back for some time, so I felt a bit more comfortable than before. Slowly, I unzipped the tent and peeked out. Blackness. The wind through the leaves, and some quiet wildlife, but nothing unusual. I stepped out, trying to make as little noise as possible. I was shaking from equal parts cold and fear. I made my way over to the closest tree, intent on very quickly taking care of business, my eyes darting around the area. As I was finishing up, something moved. I heard it first and immediately spun my head to face it. Eyes. Now, seeing the eyes of wildlife glowing at night is not unusual, but this was. They weren't just reflecting light, they were emitting it, and they were just staring. I slowly walked back to my tent, not breaking any eye contact. As soon as I closed the tent, I heard it sprint right at the tent. Then, nothing. It was waiting, staring at the door. I could see 2 bright dots through the nylon. "What the hell is that?" my co-counselor shrieked. I had woken him when I had crept back in the tent. I don't know. "Don't go outside," I stammered. I curled up and closed my eyes. The sounds didn't stop though. It was as if they had learned there were people in that tent. I heard them congregating around it, just waiting. I didn't dare look. I didn't sleep at all that night. Several hours later, the sun came up. The noises stopped, and shaking, I unzipped the tent and jumped. A perfect circle of stamped earth surrounded the tent. Tracks, from where those things had been circling. I was desperate to get the hell off this island, so I packed up my shit as quick as possible, and we started making breakfast. We left an hour and a half later. As the island shrunk into the distance, I saw the people from the cottages again. They were gathered on their porches, muttering to themselves in hushed tones. I was just glad to be gone from that place. As the day went by, I thought I noticed shapes moving along the wooded banks. Small, dark shapes, moving quite slowly, like a walking pace, just keeping up with our group. I was sure I was imagining things. Maybe last night was just a dream. Adam hadn't said anything, and I definitely didn't want to talk about it, so I just left it alone. We got to camp well before nightfall. We played cards, went swimming, and my partner brought out the harmonica that he had brought on the trip. I even managed to relax a little. It was a good day. After sunset, we had a bonfire, and we went to bed soon after. As I was lying in my tent, I listened for any noises, dreading that those things would come back again. Nothing. I was safe. I don't know what woke me. More than likely, it was my co-counselor. I opened my eyes to see him sitting straight up, arms crossed, shaking. "Hey, what's up?" I muttered, still half asleep. He said nothing. He just sat there, wide-eyed and shivering. I sat up to look at him, and that is when I saw them. At least a dozen pairs of eyes surrounding the tent, glowing, bright, not moving, just staring. Every once in a while, a set of them would blink. They had followed us. That night was the worst of my life. My partner and I sat motionless in the tent for what felt like days. We sat, watching these eyes, just staring. Finally, the sun came up. The bright eyes began to fade, then disappeared entirely. We still did not budge. It was only when one of our campers noticed that it was quite late and we still weren't up that we were able to get up. "Hey guys, what time is it? Should we get moving?" We take their watches away on trips so they can be more in touch with nature, you see. "Come let us out," I stammer. "Our zipper is stuck inside." This was a lie, of course, but neither I nor Adam wanted to open the door. A few seconds later, the door rips open and a smiling face is on the other side. "Thanks, bud," I said, relieved. We both made our way out of the tent and slowly started the day. As I was getting the liquid eggs out for breakfast, Adam approached me. He leaned in and whispered, "That happened, right? Last night. That wasn't a dream?" I couldn't contain myself. I started sobbing. With tears in my eyes, I looked back at him and nodded. "Well then, we're going back to camp. Today." We had one more night left in our trip, but I was more than happy to leave early. Adam called the camp, and made up some excuse about low water levels, and we arranged for a pickup that afternoon. We got to the spot and waited for the van. A couple of hours later, John pulled up with the trailer. He looked just as we left him, white as a sheet and wide-eyed. He hopped out of the van and, saying nothing, started loading canoes into the truck. So did we. It was almost 2 whole hours before he said something. Most of the campers were asleep in the back, and those who weren't were getting there. Even Adam had managed to go down. "You stayed on the island." It wasn't a question. He knew. I just nodded. "You saw them. Did they follow you?" Again, I nodded, chills running down my back. I felt nauseous. "How do you..." I managed before he cut me off. I did it too. 3 years ago. Just me and a buddy. They watched us for 2 nights. Just staring. He paused. He was shaking now, and visibly upset. The morning after the 3rd, he continued. Duncan was gone. Never found him. The Rangers never found him. I almost went to jail. For the rest of the ride, we were silent. We got back to camp, and aside from triple checking the locks on the doors and windows, the rest of the session went without a hitch. I quit after that session for personal issues. I have not gone camping since then. I don't know what followed us, but it sure as hell sounds like we dodged a bullet.